Aotearoa Rugby Pod once again. Different set today. We'll go through why very, very soon, but a lot to talk about. The All Blacks, incredible performance, especially the first 20 minutes. What do we read into it? What do we read into how the box went when their big dogs came off the bench? What about the Eddie Jones effect? How long does he have to get it all right? We'll talk a bit of Black Ferns, and we'll have our special guest for today come on. So, welcome to our new studio. Our old studio with a different couch while we set up a few All Blacks interviews that we're going to run over the next few weeks. Of course, James Parsons, Bryn Hall, just fizzing to talk some Test footy.
Oh yeah, especially that first 25 minutes.
A lot of fun,
yeah,
a lot of fun.
But good to watch.
Before we get into that, I'll let you know what's going on. So we managed to wrangle a bunch of All Blacks to come on the show in the weeks leading into the World Cup. So each week you're going to see a segment from this couch as we record them. We'll be in the regular studio most of the time, but we'll throw to the segment on this couch. We've got All Blacks coming through. Rieko Ioane, Beauden Barrett. Today, Beauden Barrett. We'll give you the big dogs. It's going to be really, really good. So, but before we get to Beauden Barrett, let's talk about this test on the weekend. Beauden was exceptional in that test match. Really exceptional. The first 20 minutes, though. Chipper, for you, what was it in the first 20 minutes that really set the All Blacks apart from what we've seen from them in the last year or two?
Yeah, well, I think probably the aerial battle was one, you know, like getting up. They came with that contestable game to get in the air and challenge, but then also the boys up front physically winning those collisions. They kept it pretty simple, like they just carry strong. I think best example was Shannon Frizzell coming out the other side defensively, so it didn't allow for the Springboks to get their mojo defensively in that dominance, and I think they grew a lot of confidence from it, of the pack, and if you look at their stats as individuals, as in a group, they certainly won that sort of collision breakdown area for, you know, probably 50-60 minutes of that game.
Impressed, bro?
Absolutely. I think, man, we've talked about it a lot around the breakdown, and look, that first 20 minutes, guys they were a little bit tighter. I think they wanted to go direct and go through them, especially against big men. You could see they were a little bit tighter and just really concentrate on ball carrier and then cleaning. And then the attacking kicks, I think more so our contestable games. I think we had 11 contestables, getting 6 of them back, which is at 55%, which is, you know, in this day and age, you're looking at kind of 30-25% is a good day, let alone 55%. And so we'll touch on obviously with Beauden, but his attacking kicks to Will Jordan especially. You look at his try, but then throughout the game, really, I guess, kind of the pendulum was in all sorts just due to the fact of that kicking game, and then also execution as well. And with the likes of having Will Jordan back, thought he was outstanding, and Shannon Frizzell, you know, just backed up his performance, and Mendoza with another great performance, which you'd like to think now he'd probably be the 6th moving forward.
Where have you seen the big improvements in and around that clean out? That obviously made such a massive difference against a box team that's known for it.
Yeah, I think early on, as I said, they keep it simple. Like there's no sort of tip pass or looking to go out the back. It's literally the guy who carries, and the other two are tight. So they're not trying to spread the defence to, you know, sort of take advantage of the holes. They're just clear that, you know, out carry, cleaners are in fast, and you know, both sides did it pretty well. The Springboks did it well, and when we didn't get it right, if one of those cleaners got challenged, they did get the turnover. But it's that simplicity, and then to build to that sort of the tips and going out the back later when teams are fatiguing. But it's almost like they're decluttered, and having that clarity just allows them to be able to focus on winning the collision.
Is that the blueprint? This is what we're going to see from here on in?
I just think, like we talked probably about 12 to 18 months ago, the areas where we probably needed the All Blacks to be better was around the breakdown area, which has been a massive improvement. Set piece, continuing to keep getting better in that, but then also our attacking kicking games, because this line speed pressure, you know, probably before this year, we weren't able to get it to the edge, you know, with this line speed pressure. But with the attacking kicking games, we've got Beauden Barrett, we've got Richie Mwanga, Geordie Barrett who can do that, David Havili when he's there. You've got a lot of kicking options that will be able to get to that space. So I think it's set up really, really nicely for us. And I know that probably that coaching group, the players and whatnot, would be wanting to continue to keep better at that. But what we are seeing is an improvemements in those areas, which I think are going to bode us really, really well against the likes of the French and the Irish in the back end of that Rugby World Cup especially.
And I do think it's the work off the ball a lot. So if you look at that, so you got the pod, you go out the back to that player, you've got your winger right on the edge, and that's when you get the attacking kick. But because these players, sort of those midfield players, are having those really solid downlines when they're going for that kick, it sucks the defence in. So that's what allows them time. And as you saw, because of that defence, if you look at Will Jordan's try at the first, because of that defence and those bodies running in motion, it slowed kits off just for a second. And that's the hole Jordan went through, and obviously we scored from. So everyone's having that clarity of their role. Like there will be stars that stand out, but it's actually everyone off the ball that's I suppose, manipulating the defenders to create opportunities, and then people with the ball have to make the right decision.
And I think also probably the last 2 weeks we talked around everybody doing their role, but they're nailing the execution of it at specific times. And I think probably in the last 12 to 18 months we have had opportunities to get the ball to the width, but we weren't able to get it there, whether they're not on the same page or not. But I think now it's very clear they're very decisive around their attacking kicks because the space is there, or they're going through with a tip ball, or there's opportunities on the outside and they're getting that ball to there. I think the very first try, it wasn't pretty, but they got the ball to the edge with quick hands and then a little bit offload, go in between, and then obviously Will Jordan sets up Aaron Smith for that first try. So I think we're just in a really good place of executing really, really well. But knowing that group, they'll be wanting to continue to keep getting better because they know what's at the back end of that Rugby World Cup against the Irish and the French coming forward.
And I think you mentioned set piece, and if you look at that, we're pretty clinical there. And big fan of Sam Whitelock, obviously, and probably surprised that we didn't see him out there, but man, tip of the cap to Brodie and Scott Barrett. 93% against the Springboks side with that. They're a tall pack, and to the throwers, of course. But I think that competition and that lock spot now is man, you can't leave Brodie out. His stats, he was 65% in game line carries. You need that to win a World Cup. So you have to think he's a lock. Barrett's similar. So, between those three and the versatility that Tupou Vaa'i provides, and Josh Lord was pretty effective against Argentina. So that sort of, I can only see set piece getting better because of that competition. And scrum time, there was only one slip up, and it was when obviously they brought the bomb squad on, and sort of fresh legs versus fatigue. But those boys up front, especially De Groot and Lomax, are really killing it.
Just on their Jip, who would you start at lock?
Oh, I don't know. I just
would you think? But obviously,
did you not just listen to the last 2 minutes?
You talk around Sam Whitelock, you just can't feel the way that Scott Barrett and Brodie are playing. Putting Sam on there, you can obviously do it.
I
but
think
it's
Shannon
warranted.
Frizzell's form has also added to the equation. There was potentially maybe the opportunity for Scott to move to 6 because he wanted all 3 of them on the field, but. I'm based on the weekend. You have to go with the 2. Yeah, currently.
I agree.
Is Sam an impact player?
I think he is such a smart brain. A lot of that success will be down to the work he's done during the week. He would have contributed a hell of a lot, even though he didn't play. But then also against tiring opposition and having sort of his experience and nous off the bench, I do think it's doable. And I think he's just got to get out there and get some runs on the board because we were singing his praises only a few weeks ago around that Crusaders game, and you can't see a team without him in it. But that competition, if he gets a couple of big performances against the Wallabies, then it's a tough job for Jace Ryan and co.
One question I had for you about the line-out: were you surprised that the Boks didn't compete more often?
Yeah, well, I thought it was clearer and good movement, but again, it was that speed to set to just get in and go. I shouldn't say we, but the All Blacks, sort of didn't look to let them off the hook early, especially at set piece time. They're looking to play their up tempo style, and I thought Cody threw really well as well when they did get in there.
And from a halfback's point of view, not having the opposition compete, it makes your job quite a lot easier, doesn't it?
Oh, it does, and I think
touch and go though.
It depends where the delivery is, and Jip's obviously talking about they might put pressure through that. So I think there's a lot of work that halfbacks do with the locks as well, being able to get that delivery right, because sometimes they might see, if the set piece is going really well, you can get a forward or loose forward, whoever it is in that position, to go hard at Aaron or the halfbacks. But I'm presuming that Aaron's done a lot of work with the locks in that, and even the loose forwards as well. But I think just coming back to also the breakdown area, you're looking at Aaron Smith right now, he's probably had the best 2 test matches to start the season in a very long time. And that's coming back to the work that those forwards are doing, especially in that first 20 minutes. You're just looking at balls on a platter and it's bang, bang, bang out. So, they'll be wanting perfection. It's an imperfect game, but at the same time, if they continue to just keep winning those shoulder battles and taking the opportunities that they have, especially in those 20 minutes, it's going to set them up really well. And I think it's a really good test for them as well. The Springboks brought the bomb squad on. They got a good pay out of that for that 20 minutes, but then we were able to come over the top and score 2 tries. So that sets us up really well. We didn't get things all our own way like we did in Mendoza. They were able to stay in the fight and then, pull through a good victory at the back end of that game.
Do you think the Springboks didn't quite kick enough? Only 14 kicks for the game.
Yeah, I think it might have just frazzled them a little bit, saying we've got to play a little bit different and chasing the game. Because when have you ever seen a 28 to 14 kicks when it comes to the South Africans? They dropped 2 balls early on, no contest, they just dropped the ball. And so they were a little bit under pressure, and I think probably the warning and the scary thing for the All Blacks is that they're going to get better. They'll know that they weren't at their best. But yeah, obviously I think with how we played and they got on the back foot so early, maybe changed the game where they didn't want to kick as much.
And we had quite a high number of rucks. Like we had 12 inside our 22 in our own 22 and 26 in between the 22 and 50 versus they only had 2 in their 22 and then 7. So they were looking to get out of their huff, but we kicked a hell of a lot for our standards, 28 kicks. And then we also played like Mark Talair and Will Jordan, chanced their arm with Bodie at the back there and probably didn't get the impact that they wanted. But I like that they're having a lick first and then going to that sort of contestable kicking game as well, because you've got to count on guys like Will and Mark in particular. They will come out the other side at some point.
You're not always going to get those contestables back. Like I talked around, it's 55% getting the ball back. But what that does do, it's been able to, when you're in that no man's zone that we've talked about a lot, if you can just get it to a 50-50, those are the percentages that you come back. It might be a quick turnover. You might get the ball for an X amount of phases, build pressure, and you're kind of kicking on your own terms. So that was a great night at the office with our kicking game.
It's hard to imagine, after watching Talair and Jordan play on the wings, that isn't the starting win combination come the World Cup.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, but man, Leicester hasn't had a crack. I think his Super Rugby form, he was lighting things up, and I don't know where he's at, but I definitely think he deserves a chance in that 11 jersey. But based on the other night, in terms of the game plan we know that is best suited to win this World Cup, those two men are, well, I think Will Jordan's a lock. Mark's naturally normally a right winger, but has the ability to play 11. And I suppose it depends on what style they want to play, because Leicester isn't Mark, they are different players. But he is a power winger and he's played pretty well this year.
What it has done as well, there's just not that many test matches anymore. There's maybe 2 before the World Cup. So guys that you're thinking around, obviously Leicester's been a little bit injured and some guys haven't had opportunities. It's probably going to get one shot against the Aussies and then obviously the South Africans, I think, we're over in London. So you got to be able to take your opportunity.
I think by then they're picking their 23.
Well, that's what I mean. Like it might be one test now that you're getting one opportunity, at Leicester, for example, or the others to really stake their claim. I want to see Cam Roygaard as well.
Nawara as well.
He had a great test.
It's good that we're having this issue because you even look at the way the All Blacks 15s perform. Man, there's a lot of people putting their hands up.
There's only 33 that go to the World Cup, right? So there's going to be some tough conversations that we might think would be locks in to the games.
And Will Jordan obviously set the game alight. But, Bryn, there were some moments in there where Will Jordan does things that other people just don't do. Like his vision for finding opportunities or his vision for having other people set him up for other opportunities is incredible. Yeah, well, I think fortunately for Will, it went his way in the first 20 minutes. Sometimes, one side of the wing has a day and the other one doesn't. But look, I think his involvement in that first 20 minutes, man, it set us up really, really well. You look at the opportunity where he did the replay ball, got tackled, got back up to his feet, went through the gap. He's got that pace. We know that he's got that pace then to set up Aaron Smith. But I think it's just involvements that he has off the ball as well. The contestable games, honestly, chasing the ball and being able to get around the escorts, being able to get up for the ball, contest for it, get it back, all those kind of things is what you expect of your winger. And I think, he's always going to pop up and have opportunities to go through that space. But I just love the work that he does off the ball to be able to put himself in positions to be able to, influence the games like he did on the weekend.
I want to credit Mark there as well, though, because if you look at statistically, him and Will had the same amount of carries and, just under metres-wise was Mark. And the work he does to come off his wing and get a carry or fight his way through contact and collision, although he's slight and maybe not seen as a power winger, he does have the ability to sort of come out the other side of collisions. Although Etzebeth really got to him at one stage. I was like, man, he's watched his highlights reel. He wasn't letting him get through.
We talked about Brodie, we talked about Scott, but there was something about that pack. There was a mean streak. It was relentless, and I wouldn't call it nasty, but it was mean in a good way, that.
And I reckon a great example of that, it was towards the end of the game, and Samasoni, I think he threw your boy, Quagga Smith, and just stood over him. And I've never actually seen, he's capable of it, but I've never seen him stand over someone, and then someone, I think it was... Arm came over to say something. He just walked off, just so cold. It was, and that's what the, sort of Cody Taylor alluded to it in the week. leading up. But that is, I reckon for 4 or 5 years, the most clinical an All Black pack's played for a long time.
I think obviously knowing Jason Ryan, that's his personality.
Yeah.
It's he's very confrontational, not afraid to have those conversations, and so I think you've just slowly seen our All Black forward pack just get meaner, more relentless, and being able to just do the things that forwards should be doing, but they're doing it on countless times.
And he must just keep it so simple because the clarity of the way they're playing, they just look so free.
But sometimes that's it, Jip. When you've got again, I'm not in the environment, but just knowing Jace, very, very simple around what his mindset and what your expectation is, especially around the breakdown area. But what he does do, he'll be no doubt be going to all of those forwards, showing them clips around, right, you need to be better here, this is your good body height, this is what you need to get better at. So when you're having those conversations consistently, as a player what it is, but the most important thing is being able to do it at the training. Because you only play 80 minutes of a game, you get all the training habits that you get in your trainings. And so he's been there for now almost a year, and you think about how many trainings they would have had, the conversations, the meetings, and now we're just seeing the All Black forward pack, I guess, getting back to where we want to see them and, I guess, dominating big men, which we probably need to see at the back end of the World Cup as well.
And the driving Maldi as well, Jip. They did concede one, but...
Here we go.
We jinxed that.
Yeah, we did.
It's you and I. We need to have a good look at ourselves.
Sorry, Jace. Sorry, mate.
But we were texting on our group chat, and I was just saying, the maul has just come so far, and we did say it didn't look like it was able to be penetrated, but then my boy Malcolm Marks did exactly that. But it is still really, really efficient, and it's if you watch early on the game, just the work of Sam Cane knowing where the momentum's going, and so he pops out, he's right on the side defending there, and he comes around and fills this hole and stops it, and then the ref goes use it or lose it. So again, it's another area of the game they've got clarity on, and they know what to expect. They're not pushing teams round a corner, because once it goes round a corner, sort of like Marx's try, there's just no stopping it. But from beginning of last year to this year, that's almost a weapon.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's the Pumas, although Creevy got off the back and scored one, they were sort of stunted with it the week prior too, and we know the French and the Irish love it.
And just knowing Jace, he talked about that in his interview around the Pumas got real close to it. Then obviously the Springboks got through. I know that for that review, it'll be horrendous around, it'll be very, very tough, but it'll be solution focused around that. But, no better being in a forward pack, knowing you're going into that meeting and saying, oh, did I get my job right there? And that comes back to the accountability, and that little bit of edge that I think that All Black forward pack definitely has at the moment due to Jace Ryan being there.
And during that kind of 20 odd minutes when the bomb squad came on for South Africa and really pulled the game back, if it hadn't have been for that Maldi, it probably would have been a very different scenario. That felt like the winning and the losing of the game to me, never mind the first 20 minutes.
The South Africans operated at 81% line-out time. So again, we saw this against Argentina, is we're stunting opportunities. Retallick got up for one, I think Barrett got up for another, and those steals, although they seem like they're nothing, they lead to a lot of, sort of big moments late in the game where they taken the opportunity. We spoke about it weeks ago, that discipline, so your accuracy, the breakdown and at line-out time and scrum time, don't piggyback into the corners. Well, the All Blacks are also not doing that, but then they're taking opportunities away from the opposition, even when they go to the penalty, which I thought was dubious when they got, I think, Ethan the Group for going in and sort of swung the momentum, but from that line-out, that's when Retallick got the steal. So those are massive plays, although they seem like nothing. They're big plays, especially against the Springboks.
I think also as well, people always say, we said last week in Mendoza, the second half wasn't great. But you're not always going to have momentum in games. And I think the biggest thing around is trying to repel it. And then obviously you look on the weekend, the bomb squad came on, and fair enough, they had 20 minutes of pressure and been able to score points and got it really close. But then to our credit, the next 20 minutes we scored 2 tries. Will Jordan's try in particular, that wins us the game, I think. But that's going to set us up really, really well, because we're not always going to have it our own way. The first 20 minutes, we might lose the next 20 minutes for the next two test matches. But then just being able to find a way to get your points and then being able to win a game ugly, or like we did on the weekend, their last 20 minutes.
So the one thing I love is the hot, fast starts.
Yeah.
We probably haven't seen that for a number of years. We're putting the pressure on teams rather than us having to chase our way out of these test matches, which does make life a little bit easier.
We look at the Ireland series, every single time they score a try after long phases, and then it's, they've scored first. And just subconsciously you think, okay, do we need to do things different? And so you look at the Springboks on the weekend, I think in the 27 minutes they had 2 drop balls where there was nobody around them off just kicks. You know what I mean? So when you're playing well, the other team's playing well, 17 points down, pressure, we're flown over to Queenstown for a week, and all those kind of things go at the back of your head.
But also, like, the Irish scored quick, but then we almost pushed things, and then we were put back into our corner, that discipline again, that accuracy around the breakdown.
Yep.
So they really seem like they're living in that moment, like every moment of the game, rather than going, they didn't get comfy after 17.
Yeah.
No, like they just keep going, and that last 20 was probably just as impressive as the first 20 in terms of the composure when it tightened up.
I've got some box friends who've put a lot of rand into going to France later in the year, and one of their things was like, how big of a problem is this for us? So how big of a problem is this for the Springboks? Are they that far off where they need to be?
No. Like, we've got to give credit to the All Blacks, but also, like we sort of touched on it last week, I don't think I've ever seen a team that, if half a squad gets sent early, do well.
Yeah.
I just think that cohesion and the time together, touring the hotel, talking rugby, you're engaged. They would have watched the game and they would have, probably doing some previewing of the All Blacks and so forth, but it's just not the same. And that disconnect takes a while, and obviously they had to travel in, so they wouldn't have had a lot of time on the grass as a group. I think it was just, the combinations were a little bit clunky, and those players hadn't played a lot of rugby. So, and I think, the All Blacks acknowledged that as well. I think we'd be silly to, and I'm not just doing this because of YouTube comments, but yeah, I still think they're in a good spot.
Yeah. I think we talked around last week how well they were going. So one performance doesn't really dictate how you can be for the rest of the year, and they know that, they've got a plan around the World Cup. You look at the World Cup last time, we beat them quite convincingly in round robin, and then they end up winning the World Cup. So it can be left really, really late, and we can probably touch on the Australians, and that might be their mindset moving forward. But no, I think, they'll take a good learnings from that, knowing that, if you're a little bit off, not only against the All Blacks, but at the back end of the year, probably going to get the result that they did on the weekend. That won't be that bad moving forward.
Yeah, I went straight to Twitter to see what Rusty was going to say. He'd had a bit of a break off Twitter for some of the year, but he was back and he basically said, look, they were good. We've got no one to blame but ourselves. The coaches made some mistakes. And then Jack Nienaber referred probably to, the mistakes they've made with bringing players in and out and all those kind of things. So it was quite good to see the coaches take ownership of it. In the coaching box, I think there was a shot about 20 minutes in where you could see them, they were deflated in the coaching box. And it wasn't a look like you see from coaches about that player stuffed that up. It was us. It was internal. Yeah. We didn't get it right.
It's funny because everyone was sort of getting into the All Black coaching group around taking the group all the way to Argentina and then bringing them back. It just shows you can't buy that time together and that understanding. And even though the flight back from Argentina to Auckland was long as well, on the plane you're in lounges or you're sitting out in the airport, you're discussing rugby, you're thinking how can we beat the Boks, where could we be better. You don't get that when you're separated, and then you've got to chase your tail for the rest of the week.
Yeah, definitely.
We saw Marnie Lebok last week look really good behind a pack going forward. We saw Damien Willems probably not much of an impact behind a pack going backwards. And obviously there's Pollard to come back. Where do you see this all fitting in? Because you need your 10 probably to take more control than Willems took in that game.
Yeah, we take control, but at the same time, when you're under that much pressure, it doesn't matter if you're, Richard Moore or Beauden Barrett or the best 10 in the world. It's really hard to be able to operate when you're going backwards. I think they're in a bit of a dilemma similar to us. We obviously talked around Damien, Richie, who's going to start. You'd have to think maybe Pollard is the guy if he was there, but they need to either decide if that's Lebok or Willems. They showed trust in Willems with this test match, but I love Lebok, man. Like his passing game and I guess awareness around when you're trying to get that ball to space. He showed that a little bit on the weekend. Obviously not as much as he was when he played last week, but yeah, they need to make a decision around if Pollard's going to be their 10, if not, or if it's going to be Willems, back him, and then use that time to get the cohesion with the group and being able to move forward.
The one point of difference I feel Pollard has is his kicking percentage. South Africans are so big on scoreboard pressure, and that game would have been closer had a few of the either penalties or conversions gone over. So I think 2 weeks in a row against Australia, I know they were formidable. It was a low kicking percentage, and I think Rugby World Cups are going to be close, and having the ability to, accrue points via 3 will be important.
The interesting thing we'll find if they have Andre Pollard there, they have shown, I guess, during this rugby championship, they do want to use the ball a lot more, and obviously that doesn't depend if Willems is there or Lebok's there. Will they have the same kind of mindset when Pollard's there? Because he is a very good traditional 10 of being able to kick you around the parks, making good percentages and kicking on your own terms. But they have shown that they might have an attacking brand as well.
You can't say they showed that on the weekend though. They had 2 rucks. They had 9 rucks inside their own half. Like, they weren't looking to play from my point of view. And then any chance that they may have had the time to play, they knocked it on.
Yep.
So I don't think it's enough to say that he can't play that role, but it's definitely not natural.
Yeah, it feels like in a World Cup scenario where you're often under pressure, you should probably bail out Andre Pollard.
Also, territory is more important at that point.
And if they know, if there's any team in the world, in this part of the country, this part of the world, that knows how to play World Cup rugby, it's the Springboks. They have got the ability that we've shown that they want to run the ball. But like if it's raining, or they want to be able to play a little bit negatively and more so just being able to build pressure through their contestable games and their line speed pressure, they've got the ability to be able to do that. So I think it's actually quite good that they're showing the attacking side of it, because they can do that at the World Cup. Then we always know they can go back to their set piece, suffocate teams with contestable game, and also just their high line speed pressure, making teams make mistakes in their own part of the field.
I don't think Willems should get ridiculed though for the weekend. Like, a lot of that forward pack will be looking at themselves. They just couldn't get their game going because they couldn't win those collisions.
Yep. Yeah, what about Richie Mo'unga? He obviously started at 10. There was a lot of chat last week about should Damien get another crack, Damien McKenzie. How do you feel he went in his role, obviously partnering with the other playmaking options, Geordie and Beauden Barrett?
It went very well. It was probably the best, I reckon. Richie and Bodie have sort of connected in knowing their roles, and there was a clear driver and a clear second man, and we spoke about giving the keys, and it certainly looked that way. But it looked like that obviously the week prior too. So similar to the locking situation, it's going to be a tough selection. But you've almost, I don't think they should make their decision now and then move forward with it.
And I think also around his goal kicking as well, it's been massive.
He's good.
He's obviously having a high percentage whether it become any normal test match, but going into Rugby World Cup, Richie's kicking at a pretty good set up at the moment. But I think I agree with Chip. It's probably the first time we've really seen Richie and Bodie both doing what we need to do in different situations. With Bodie's kick, especially his attacking kicking game, even Bodie doing that little chip, Richie's flying through, so they're both on the same page, seeing the same space, and so. But I think the challenge now is really just keep those two together. I know you'd love to see other guys have opportunities, but if that's the key, you're 10, 12 and 15, that's the kind of pendulum around. You need those guys all playing well, having that cohesion. And I think you look on the weekend, it's a great start for those three guys and really driving condition places.
I think it makes it hard for teams when probably previewing the All Blacks now is they utilise the short side really well, and I think it was probably that clarity of role that allowed that. Even if they there wasn't there, they still utilised the short side and got a bend to then open up on the open side. So, and then you look at that last try for Will Jordan. It was a switch sort of kick move because they saw that defenders had overchased, and that's what it created. So, man, you just got to, as an opposition now, you've got to have a head on a swivel, and it's not about just outworking. You've got to work smarter.
I think it just shows that they're all on the same page. And you look at that Will Jordan try, for example, if you can bring that vision up, Ross, when you get your time. Win that advantage. That's not me, honestly. That's not me. But, as soon as that advantage went out, you look at Will Jordan, he's not even in position. He's putting his hand up. He's running back to the sideline, knowing they've obviously done a bit of preview around that. Beauden Barrett's had a quick look, and then the execution of the kick because Will's there. And that comes back to them knowing their roles real clear, and then execution obviously as well. And so the All Blacks in a really nice place at the moment around taking the opportunities where they probably haven't done that in the last 12 months when they've had the opportunities.
I think even Geordie, he did a kick pass backwards to allow for the space. It was like they're seeing this thing 360. Was that not on purpose?
Not sure.
Not going backwards, I don't think.
We can ask him.
Yeah, they went to the man and he was standing there.
What it does do, when you've got guys that can kick, it's not just a 9, a 10 or a 15, probably all our backline can kick. So when you're previewing that, it's like, sometimes you might find on the weekend you had Bodie or Geordie or Richie kicking. Sometimes, they might try and change their pitches, but then 2 passes to the edge, Will Jordan might kick it, or, Lester or Caleb Clark have that left foot. So defending that and being able to have that analysis, it's pretty hard when you've got all backs that can do attacking kicks and long kicks as well.
And it felt like when Aaron Smith kicked, he only needed one blocker because it's like the opposition weren't there on him.
And they've done such an efficient job, the breakdown there with bodies on the ground and getting back to their feet.
Okay, as promised, we're going to be bringing you an All Black each week heading into the Rugby World Cup. To start off with, it is with Beauden Barrett. Unfortunately, Jipper had to go, so couldn't be there for this interview. But here is Beauden Barrett. Beauden, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, guys. Good to be here.
Just come back from Eden Park, maybe?
Yeah, look, I'm in all sorts. I've got a polo, stubbies and socks on, but it's been a busy day of these things. No, it's good to be here.
Nice. Awesome game on the weekend. Great progression from Mendoza, I guess. We've talked a lot around the breakdown area, and it's been such a positive for you guys in the last two games. But then also your attacking kicking games. I don't know how many times you would have done those attacking kicks, but you guys are operating like 55% contestables back or attacking kicks. So.
Oh, look, as you know, the breakdown's critical. It's like set piece. To get dominance in a game, you've got to be going forward, and one way to stop that is to stop the set piece or slow the ball down at the breakdown or make us put in more numbers. But yeah, it's something that we see as critical for us, a set piece and the way we look after the ball, recycling and being able to play at a speed that we, I guess, feel that teams are chasing us, and that gives us the opportunity to get the ball to the space where we want it to go far more quicker, which, as you saw in the first 15 minutes, that was some of the quickest rugby we've ever played. And the challenge was the box. Of course, they adapted, and in the second half you saw a different, we were under the pressure a bit more, and it was probably more of a contest that we expected. And we didn't get the pay that we did early on. But the kicking game as well, it's so important these days with defences the way they are. If they want to come with some line speed, there's always going to be space somewhere. So how you expose that or find it sometimes comes with ball in hand or off the foot. So.
Yeah, you guys have. It's been an area like you guys have gotten a lot better in, because for a couple of years, probably 2 years ago, the line speed pressure that teams were putting on the All Blacks, you weren't necessarily you weren't able to get the ball there, whether it be through a pass like you did on the weekend, the bridge pass to Will. But there's been an improvement in there. Has that just been through the communication and being able to hear those comms that are coming in, or is it just you're seeing it in more preparation?
To be honest, I think every team struggled to attack line speed in recent times, and we're just getting better at learning how to deal with it, how to play against it. The comparisons between the way the Argentinians defend versus the box, it's so different. Like the Argies are probably the best at holding and pushing, whereas the box will come and be a bit more confrontational and try and shut down your time on the ball. So it was pleasing to see the way we adapted within 6 days or 7 days to the different defences based on the limited prep we had in the Springboks game. But we thought we knew how they'd defend, and it wasn't too dissimilar to what we've had in recent times against them. But what you get with line speed is less time on the ball to make your decision and execute your skill. So you'll have plans. Those will have to change if the pictures you think are going to be out there aren't on the weekend. And we felt that the Springboks kind of knew how we wanted to expose that space, and we could hear them talking about it. But again, it's up to you to back yourself to execute it and adapt on the go when these pictures change.
So a lot of it is heads up. It's not so much pre-prescribed. Yeah.
You do your analysis and you have to confirm it out there, but you always need plan B or option C because teams are getting good at changing pictures too. Like you'll look up in front of you, the ball goes into the scrum and the whole picture changes. So you call a move based on the initial one, but you have to have those overcalls to exploit where the changes and the spaces.
We used your example last week with Geordie's try, the going back down the short side. Now that obviously comes back to an action where I actually thought it was you that called it, but it might have been Caleb. But I feel like this All Blacks team to start with, the last 2 weeks, you guys have just been real clear. You've looked like you guys have been just real direct, very easy, and it's been really, really easy for you guys. I'm not too sure if you felt like that, but it's been a lot better this year.
The coaches have really collaborated well on both sides of the ball, and the plan has been really simple in terms of not overloading us with how we want to play the game, particularly that first game against Argentina. The flip side of not making a Super Rugby final is you get to go to a camp and work on these things, which we did at the Mount. So we figured out how we wanted to play the game and the direction we want to go in, and what steps we need to take, the little tactical and technical shifts to allow us to play the game that we want to play. But yeah, it's a good start.
You talk about making changes. How much of it is a collaboration between the players and the coaches? Because obviously the coaches have a vision, but you guys are out on the field. How does it work when you are making decisions like that? Yeah,
good question. Obviously the coaches have had months and months to collaborate, watch other teams, the way and trends, the way they're doing things up north and so on, and the way the trends I've seen in Super Rugby. So they don't want to completely change the way we've been playing in Super Rugby, but in the All Blacks you do things a certain way, and essentially they'll give us a structure or a framework to play to, and you've got 2 or 3 things within that. That's our DNA, and will give us opportunity to play, and that's where Joe Schmidt's been really good for our attack, and Fozzie's been great around the structural way we want to play from set piece strikes and so on. So they're working really well together, and in defence we've made little changes too. So I think what we're getting is complete buy-in. Everyone's on board. Everyone wants to be there at the business end of the season, and it's a good start. It's only a start, but to beat the Boks and Argentina in the first 2 weeks, we've got to be happy that we're going in the right direction.
Yep. Maybe going to give us a little bit of an insight around maybe defensively what you're doing in the backfield and trying to help out your wingers and how much communication you have to do.
I know as a 10 playing fullback how much I rely on outside comms. But yeah, the defensive part of the game and the backfield, like it's very important. Often sitting at home on TV you wouldn't see us, but the amount of running we're doing, covering space, because ultimately that's what you're looking for in a game of rugby. You don't want to give up that backfield space or that easy kick space, and also you want to enable your wingers and your front line, whether it's 13 guys or 12 guys, depending on your system, 14 in some cases. You want to give them the most confidence to get up and put pressure on that line speed, and the best way to do that is have numbers, so you're not having to hold and push. So giving them the comms, the commitment to get up and put a shot on, and ultimately limit the time on the ball that the opposition have. That's where we as communicators and 10 and 15 usually, sometimes 10 and winger, or 15 and winger in the backfield. Like that's just our role defensively. Yep.
This might sound like a silly question. How easy is it to actually communicate? Their backs are to you, you're right behind them?
No, seriously, the noise of the stadium. You play in a place like Mendoza. Look, if they get up early on a scoreboard, it's going to be a festival. Like it's going to be carnage. Like you won't be able to hear your mate 10 metres away if they get going in terms of singing and so on. So starting well, getting on top of the voice, and that fuels them. So important to start well. When we did that, like you could hear a pin drop. Communicating was so easy, which is so rare. You won't get that in France or in New Zealand or basically anywhere else. So hand signals, body language, little cues on the run, like critical, because yes, 13 guys in front of me are facing that way. There's a lot of eye contact, there's a lot of hand signalling, but you come off the game like you know what it's like. Sometimes you don't have a voice, or you're exhausted and you're screaming the whole game.
It sounds as mentally exhausting as it is physically.
Yeah, Test rugby, it's intense. It is mentally exhausting. A lot goes into a test week, and ultimately on a Saturday you want to be having fun and going out there and expressing yourself, but it's important stuff.
Just to go, I'm not obviously on the edge, but being in Japan, have been on the edge and understanding like a fullback or a 10 in that backfield, that pendulum, if they're really clear with you, having microcomms, saying you've got last or you're second to last in, just the guy on the edge, it's really, really easy for them to go make a decision. It's really hard if you're not saying anything and then you're like, oh, is he there? And then that's all that indecision. I can imagine at test level Bodie that, if you miss that there, it's a bridge pass or it's been able to get, a lot of metres.
Absolutely. And ultimately you just want certainty, and when you're certain you can go up and put a good shot on, or whenever there's indecision or lack of trust, like that's when you get exposed. So and there's different combinations with that too, different wingers, and that was the great thing about the first two tests. We saw Caleb and Amoni in the first, and then Will and Mark. So I think when you meet during the week, you're always talking about the same stuff, but you can't take it for granted going into the next week. So you start all over again. You have the same cues, the same comms. Like, you build this really tight connection. The outsides meet, the insides meet, but there's so many different variables. You can't brush over it. You can't ever assume it's going to happen the next week. It's a lot goes into it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, mate. We really appreciate your time.
Oh, good to chat.
So good to have Beauden Barrett on. It's going to be really interesting to see how he goes against Australia and how they can handle that kicking game, Jipper.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, the beauty is his clarity. He's 15 now. We were talking about maybe potentially giving Sean Stevenson the role, but it's exciting for he may fill in at 10, but having that knowledge, of just I'm an out-and-out 15 now, I feel like it's making him better and better.
Cool. What did you see from the Australians on the weekend that made them lose to Argentina? I mean, Eddie Jones, what did he say? He made a bizarre quote that they weren't able to sustain their fluency, but there is a plausible reason, but he's not going to tell us. What could that plausible reason be that they're not doing
it right? The plausible reason is he wants you and everyone else to be thinking what the reason is, so it distracts away from what the problems are.
Look, I think the last 2 weeks their discipline, and Eddie's actually called them errors. So they're doing a lot of errors when it's coming to their game at the moment. Look, I think some of the stats here, I think 14 penalties overall, 15 turnovers as well. And so one of the things that I saw here was around the 22-metre attack. The Argentinians in the first 50 minutes were inside the 22 area for 5.5 minutes, whereas the Australians had 33 seconds. And so the amount of times that the Argentinians were able to be inside that 22, being able to build pressure, felt like they use their gas tank around the Australians. And so I think for their biggest thing has been able to get their discipline right, which has been actually a trend jip for probably the last couple of years, even under Dave Rennie. They found themselves playing a lot of footy, giving away a lot of penalties, and then at the times making a lot of mistakes. So when you're giving up ball almost 30 times a game, and the Argentinians, I thought, had times where they were able to hold on to the ball for long periods of phases, and it kind of, to be honest, Marky Mark, they call him in Australia, who had an outstanding game. I thought won it at the end, but probably would have glossed over all the areas that I've just touched on. But those are the things that I think they need to work on moving forward.
I think whether errors or ill discipline, it doesn't matter. Accuracy at the breakdown, we've harped on about it, and they're off. In terms of their decision, and it's even little things like they're clearly on the ground and they put a hand out, and the ref's just it's just lazy around that sort of decision making. The decision making you've got to make, is it a dominant tackle? Am I going to win the race in? Am I going to be a genuine attempt to get on the ball? And at the moment, they're sort of pushing the envelope. And I think there's an element of it that it's a new coaching group and they're wanting to press, and clearly everyone said, look, everything's open, spots are up for grabs, and it can sometimes work for you, but in this case I feel like players are probably over trying to make the big impact, which is leading to similar penalty counts. And then their attacking breakdown, like we spoke about the All Blacks, and I know it's not an All Blacks versus Australia thing, but tight pods, clarity, I'm carrying, you're cleaning. I haven't seen a ruck stat this low at international rugby. 88% they won on their own ball at ruck time. So, Argentina were at 90%, the All Blacks were at 97%, the Springboks were at 97%. I've never seen it go into the 80s in terms of losing your own attacking breakdown. So there's some serious work to do, and I do think you can put that down because it's not a skill set thing. Like the players can clean rucks, but there's a lot of new systems. To me, it looks so cluttered, and just so much is going on in terms of the decisions they're making, and then they're chasing their tail. On the flip side, for them, defensively, 91%, and they made RG work and work and work. So in an area that shows attitude, I think you can have confidence that they're all there fronting up. I think on attack, they can be a bit better, and then around that defensive breakdown, they can be a little bit smarter around when there's an opportunity and when there's not, because they should trust their D. 91% making nearly over 200 tackles is outstanding at international level. Yeah,
and I think that's one thing you can obviously see if you care, or your element of you care about the jersey. And so we've talked about winning championships and big games. You're based around your defence, but I think you're spot on, Jip. Those kind of numbers. As a halfback at Nick White, you'd be thinking, geez, give me some good ball, And so decluttering, and sometimes when we've had games, or you've had games like that, Jip, when there's a lot going on in your brain, you're thinking about your role, you're not thinking about right then and there, and you're not really decisive around what your role is. So you'd like to think they might lean up their menu, and so the meaning of menu around leaning up their attack strategy of their lineouts as possibly, or their scrums, making it really, really simple. So when you're going into that cleanup, because they're playing against the South Africans next, they're playing against the New Zealander next, and so if you don't get that breakdown right, and you're not there early to be able to, do what the New Zealand team, the All Blacks, are doing at the moment, you're going to start seeing numbers like that. And I think just the decision making around the breakdown as well. Eddie Jones said we're really poor. They're really poor at making decisions around what you should be doing in those situations. So he's got a lot of work.
Don't put your hands in.
Yeah, he's got a lot of work to do.
But, we talk about the defence, and that's where the Springboks had their time, obviously, with a couple of yellow cards and then going down that blind side. Like, they shored that up in a week. So, I don't think that game would have been as drastic. But again, last week against the Springboks as well, they created opportunities, they just didn't finish it on attack. And I do think you have to put it down to, they're not out of the running just yet, because there's just a lot of change going on, and sometimes it takes a while for the brain to catch up.
2 games against New Zealand, 1 against France as a Rugby World Cup warm-up. It isn't a lot of time if there are many issues. I'll ask you the same question I asked about the Springboks. Is there time to get this right?
I'm more concerned about the Australians and Springboks.
Yeah, I think the Springboks, with what they've shown and I guess the direction that where they're going, I think they're going to be okay. We talked around the travel issues and around, we didn't think that was a decision that was good. But yeah, there's just so many areas. I think, you look at the week previously, their set piece was poor. But then they come back this week, their set piece was good, but there's just so many other parts in their game that they're not getting right, and they're not bringing it all collectively. But there might be a method to Eddie's madness. He would have loved to come in straight away and been able to strip it right back and get results, but they're luckily on that side of the draw where it's going to make it a little bit easier. And that's no excuse, but I think...
Well, they've got more opportunities to grow in the tournament.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Rather than the Ireland, the French, All Blacks and Springboks.
We've got to go into the World Cup and we've got to be on the job straight away. We've got the French straight up, and then even before that, if we make it to the next stage, we're playing Ireland or who we play, Ireland or Springboks.
Yeah.
So it's unfortunate for us, but on that side, that's not to say the other side.
It's a reality.
Yeah,
You just can't hide from it. It's
Georgia, Fiji, Wales.
Well, that's it. So they're lucky in that sense. They've got time to be able to get to that quarterfinal stage when they do play.
Yeah. Now, we also saw an interesting performance on the weekend from the Black Ferns. They'd made a lot of changes. They were under a lot of pressure against the USA early on in their game in the Pacific Nations.
Discipline, the red card was for the whole game, then another yellow. But the one thing they'll be wrapped with, and led by their skipper and Ruahei Demont, the comeback and the impact they got off the bench from their senior players, was exceptional and was the difference.
Yeah, you know, you talk around playing without a 9. It's really, really hard to start the game and also finish the game. You know, Rosie Kelly's played a little bit for Matatu and for Canterbury, but anytime you lose a driver, it took them a little bit of time. You look at it was 17-5, I think, and the way they were able to bring their bench on, like you talk about, you know, Renee Holmes, the Mont, and those kind of girls coming on and being able to, I guess, go over the top of them. It'll be pleasing for that coaching staff, but at the same time, we probably thought, if there wasn't the red card, it'd be a little bit of a different result. But it's great for that tour, being able to experience something different, being able to play with 14 women and being able to be solution focused around how you get better and how you win that game. And I guess their bench came on and were able to do that.
We saw the impact of a red card at the World Cup final. It is big when you lose. It doesn't matter what position. So, going into the World 15, they need to make sure that they get their technique right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got one game against Australia before then, but I don't think there's any worry about how the top team's going.
No, it's very slick and good to give them some rest, in terms of managing this season.
Yeah, it's been a pretty impressive start for them for this year, coming off the back of a lot of change.
New coaching group and stuff like that. You've got to admire the coaching group in terms of how, we've sort of spoken about Jace Ryan and how he's decluttered. Well, clearly they're pretty clear, and you've spoken extremely highly of Mike Delaney. We've got a long relationship with Steve Jackson, and they're good operators.
Yep.
And they're doing the business.
Yep. May it continue.
Chipper, before we go, you're going to do some business over in the USA.
Yeah.
Talk us a bit through what you're going to do.
Yeah, so getting an opportunity to sort of go into a few of the sporting franchises over there. I won't labour the point, probably can do it when I'm getting back, but really interesting sort of an information sharing opportunity, and hopefully come back with plenty of little carrots and bundles of joy I can share on here.
Oh man, you're going to have the notebook out. How many notebooks are you taking?
Mate, this one's staying. I've got a fresh one for the trip. I've got a fresh one ready to rock and roll.
Awesome. Well, enjoy the trip, mate. We'll
Thank
see you
you
very, very soon. And Bryn, as always, thank you very much.
No problem, man. Good to be here.
And thank you all for joining us once again on the Aotearoa Rugby Pod. Remember, we're going to have more All Blacks coming in the weeks to come. Rieko Ioane, Beauden Barrett, Ofa Tuangafasi, a whole list of All Blacks that you can get a bit of insight into what they are into and how they're going to play and how this Rugby World Cup is shaping up for the All Blacks. So thank you once again for joining us. Please get in contact in the YouTube comment section. Send us an email, aotearoarugbypod@sky.co.nz. We'd love to hear from you and engage with you. But thank you very much once again for joining us. Mā te wā.